What was your "oh shit my life is over, my parents are gonna kill me" moment you had as a child/teen? My parents paid for my mobile phone subscription, got a girlfriend and called a lot more, too much more, raked up a 600-year bill. My soul left my body that day. Me and a few buddies got arrested for some very foolish and regrettable criminal mischief. We managed to keep it from our parents by getting to the mailbox first to destroy court notices and targeted letters from lawyers. We thought we were in the clear too, until the newspaper article with our names in it came out. There was a small lizard trapped in our garage under a pile of wood, so I moved some of them so it could get out. I must have accidentally knocked over a larger plank in the process. That landed on my dad's car and went straight through the windshield. Lizard was fine though. One time I snuck out of the house, and when I went to sneak back in, the door was locked. We never locked the doors to the house, so I knew I'd been caught. Lived on a farm, so I just went up to the hayloft to sleep the rest of the night. I skipped school by leaving the house, climbing on the garage and waiting for my mum to leave. I jumped down to let myself in as she drove off and set myself up for a day on my PS1. She then came back as she'd forgotten something and I wanted to die in a hole. The yelling was something to behold. Didn't do that again. I thought it was a good idea to play with some candles while having a ultramarathon. Turns out that was a bad idea because I ended up getting distracted and set the family couch on fire. I frantically put it out and threw a blanket over it. I didn't leave that couch for a week. 17 years old. Had a party while the parents were out of town. I had to work the next day, but timed it so I would have plenty of time to clean before they got home that evening. Came home from work. The sprinklers are on and their car is in the driveway. Driving down my driveway, I was anxiety and fear personified. I walk in the house and my mom tells me, "Your dad had to leave before you got here, otherwise he was afraid of what he might do to you." So we live in a 2-story colonial. My parents are away on vacation. I'm in the yard and tossing a baseball up in the air and catching it. Just a 9-year-old entertaining myself. I think to myself, hey, let's loft it onto the first split-level roof and then it'll roll off and I'll catch it. Second toss, crash, shatter sister's window. Grandma was babysitting. Grandma reported, I was smoked. When I was 6, I spilled grape juice on the tan carpet in the living room. I put a pillow over it, laid on the pillow, and vowed that I would stay there the rest of my life so my parents would never find out. I lasted about 45 minutes. My mom was more upset that I got grape juice on the pillow, rather than the carpet. I was 10 years old. Only pretending to drive a car with my friend in the back seat. I knew not to touch the ignition or the gearbox. So the car is parked on an incline. I lowered the handbrake and the car starts to roll backwards, moving steadily and with increasing momentum towards a concrete wall. Thankfully I knew which one the brake was, so I pressed down on it with all my might and told my friend to get out of the car and call my dad, all the while pressing down on that brake. I thought, yep, today I either die or my dad kills me. I live to tell the tale. Parents were away for the weekend. I took my dad's keys and took it for a small drive. I was never allowed to drive unsupervised. Didn't have a license or anything. Was a thrill. I came back, parked, left the keys in the same drawer he left them in. Monday arrives. I come back from school and my dad asks me to come look at the car, with a death glare. I had forgot to pull the seat back after adjusting them for my 14-year-old legs. The 5 seconds between my mum catching me smoking and actually speaking back when I was 14. When I was about 8, my sister, 10, and I used to play around the neighborhood with other kids. But we had to be home by 8 p.m. or when the street lights came on, whichever came first. We had a watch on and every evening my mum would make sure that we had one with us and it was working. One evening we were 20 minutes late, and it was the second time that week. If we were late twice in a week we weren't allowed to go out the rest of the week. My sister and I were talking by the back garden gate, making up excuses why we were late and making sure we were both on the same page in case she questioned us. We opened the gate to go inside and my mum was standing on the other side of the gate, arms folded. That was a life flashed before my eyes moment. Parents heard that my girlfriend was pregnant. She wasn't, from mutual friends of theirs and my girlfriend's parents. Dad and I had a long talk. Edit. My girlfriend thought she was pregnant. She told her parents. They told a friend. The friend to my parents. Dad told me. Edit 2. This was in 1979. I was sitting in my back garden with my best friend, and we recently acquired an air rifle. So obviously we started shooting it at things in an increasingly destructive manner, because we were 11. We shook up and banged out a can of Coke and then laughed as it went nuts, spraying its contents everywhere. Then we got a can of deodorant and it was even more ridiculous because it basically went bang but in a relatively harmless way. Then we got a can of shoe polish. Turns out shoe polish is a little bit flammable. A little bit more flammable than you might expect. The explosion set fire to my stepdad's shed. The can itself went straight up like a surface-to-air missile. Armed police arrived shortly afterwards. At the time I lived in reasonably central London, and this was in 1991, which just happened to be slap bang in the middle of the biggest ever spate of IRA terrorist attacks on the city, and a couple of months after some IRA members had driven a motorboat up the Thames and fired mortar shells at the actual fucking Houses of Parliament. The bollocking we got from the police was extreme, but it was nothing compared to the look in my mother's eyes the whole time it was going on. Because my friend and I knew that it was when the police left that things were going to get very bad indeed. The sense of apprehension, even worse than a riot cop carrying a rifle screaming in our faces about how stupid we were. It was horrific. We were doomed. And so it came to pass. She went absolutely fucking mental. My mother is a mild-mannered person, but not that day. Not that day. It still terrifies me to think of it almost 30 years later. Edit, as pointed out, it was a modified van rather than a boat that the mortar shells were fired from. Cheers all. Was looking up hentai titties when I was around 12. I'd seen my fair share of FBI has charged you with pornography, pay the court a fine and serve your sentence viruses, and knew what to expect. One day I was doing my usual rounds around Pornhub but decided to go down a rabbit hole of increasingly off-the-wall hentai out of dumb-tween curiosity. I clicked on a video and suddenly I got redirected to a white page with a picture of handcuffs to the side. I clicked on tabs and tabs that all said this account has been blocked. The text on the page itself was grammatically correct and said stuff about how pornography pay and bestiality are serious crimes and stuff like that. Immediately I panicked because this looked legit, even though what I was looking at wasn't either of those. Just general weird shit. I closed the internet, reopened Google and got the same page. I shut down the computer, unplugged it, and started having a panic attack all through the house. I was alone. Started concocting a plan to deal with the police if they showed up at my house. Even thought of going out the way of suicide by cop when they showed up to arrest me, and planned out a letter to my parents explaining that I wasn't a pervert and that I was sorry. Looked out the window every day for the police to show up. They never did. Used computer again and it was fine. Nothing happened at all. Have concluded that I got duped by a damn good virus. I browse very responsibly now. Edit, A. Gold. Thanks, man. Was texting my brother asking for help with something so that my mom wouldn't get mad. Called her a bitch in the text. Sent it to my mom. In our single digits, my older brother locked me out of the house while parents were out. I threw a stick at the back door, and shattered the storm door glass. Knew I was gonna get a licking. But my bro got the licking instead for locking me out. He was a real jerk to me as a kid. And we are in our 50s now. But he still brings up how guilty he feels for it. That kinda makes up for how much I despised him back then. Smile. I snuck out and took the car when I was 16 before I had a license to drive at night. I hit a pothole and blew a tire. I rode around on a shredded tire for 2 to 3 minutes before I drove up on a guy smoking a cigarette in his driveway. He helped me change it. The next morning my parents woke up early and were going to take the car somewhere and the spare was still on. Luckily this was right when the Goodyear or Firestone tires were all blowing out, and I told my parents that it happened earlier in the day before and I just didn't have a chance to tell them.